Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the conference. I would like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Mirka Martel. I hope I got that right. Who serves as head of research, evaluation, and learning at the Institute of International Education, also known as IIE. She manages over 20 evaluations for IIE programs and external clients, including the Ford Foundation, Carnegie Corporation of New York, State Department, and USAID. She's also the project director of the 10-year alumni tracking study for the Ford Foundation's International Fellowships Program, which is an unprecedented study measuring the impact of international scholarship on emerging social justice leaders from marginalized communities. And she also helps oversee IIE's Open Doors report, which is a very critical source of information on international educational exchange, and its Project Atlas research initiative on global student mobility. So on that note, she has been tracking the levels of international student enrollments, study abroad programs, how COVID-19 has been affecting both of those areas. And she's got all kinds of very, very helpful. I know because whenever I write a story on international education, first thing I do is go to Open Doors because the figures are always very insightful and very helpful. So we are looking forward to hearing everything that you have and all of the fun figures that you'll have for us. And so let me go ahead and, Mirka, turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Anna. It's a pleasure to be here presenting on the Open Doors project. So first, I'll talk a little bit about what Open Doors is. The Open Doors project is the most comprehensive resource on international student and scholar mobility flows to the United States and U.S. students studying abroad for academic credit. Open Doors is produced by the Institute of International Education, or IIE, with the support of the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. So for today's presentation, I will focus on the top two surveys we conduct in Open Doors, the International Student Census and the Study Abroad Survey. And before I begin to share the data, I just want to discuss a little bit what data I will be presenting. So for the census, I'll be discussing data for the 2019-20 academic year. So it's important to note that this year's data does not yet reflect the effects of COVID-19 on international students at U.S. higher education institutions, but it does provide a really necessary baseline of what was happening before the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, I know all of you are wondering about fall 2020, so I'm also going to give you a snapshot of the realities in fall 2020 from over 700 higher education institutions. This is data we collect each October through the 2020 Fall International Student Enrollment Snapshot. So first, I'm going to talk to you about the International Student Census and that data. So what we found in 2019-20 is that for the fifth year in a row, the total number of international students in the United States exceeded 1 million to 1,075,496. International students in the United States declined by 1.8% from the previous year. And one of the great things about Open Doors is that we can look at historical data. So what we've actually seen over the past 20 years has been really robust growth of international students in the US. Over the past 10 years, the total number has actually more than doubled. While we have seen a slowing of this growth, the US does remain the #1 host of international students worldwide. Most international students come to the United States to pursue undergraduate and graduate degrees. Now, what you see here is how that number, that 1 million, breaks down. So most students are at the undergraduate or graduate levels, which both declined last year by approximately 2%. Many factors are explaining student enrollment declines, including global competition, expanding educational capacity in home countries, shifting demographics, and government scholarship program changes. At the bottom of the screen in maroon, you see optional practical training, or OPT, and this in 2019-20, There were over 220,000 international students in the US on OPT. Recent increases in OPT have eased, and this year OPT increased slightly by 0.2%. Despite this leveling, the total number of students on OPT has kind of leveled off at a much higher level than in previous years. And OPT, for those of you who may not be aware, is a welcome opportunity for international students in the United States to gain practical work experience in their field of study after their degree program. And it ranges from 12 months to up to 36 months or 3 years for STEM majors. In 2019-20, international students came to the United States from over 200 places of origin. The top 3 places of origin continued to be China, India, and South Korea. And China and India together made up almost 53% of all international students in the United States. But as we include top 25 places of origin and beyond, we begin to see international students coming to the United States from Latin America, Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Finally, in 2019-20, international students were significant contributors to the U.S. economy. According to the U.S. Department of Commerce, international students contributed $44 billion to the community, primarily through their education funding. The contributions of international students over time cannot be underestimated. So here we have a 20-year view. Just 20 years ago, international students contributed $9 billion to the U.S. economy, and now that number is almost 5-fold. And according to NAFSA, we also found that almost 416,000 direct or indirect jobs were created or supported by international students. So that was the data for 2019-20. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have a preliminary look into what is happening on US campuses in fall 2020. So again, the data I will share now is from a subset of over 700 US institutions that responded to a survey we conducted in October on fall 2020 international student enrollments. And this survey does provide insight into trends affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. So what did we find? Well, first, we found that 99% of these institutions offered online instruction, either online only or through a hybrid model. And this finding was critical for us because it confirmed our need to collect data on international students both on US campuses and those studying online, either in the United States or from abroad. This allowed us to estimate the level of engagement of these students who are paying and pursuing education at US colleges and universities. It also allowed us to capture students who may not have been able to make it to the United States, but are still committed to a US higher education. So according to the fall 2020 snapshot, international students at US higher ed institutions, either in the United States on a US campus or studying online, decreased by 16% from the previous year. Responding institutions indicated that new international students availed themselves of opportunities to begin their studies remotely when they could not travel to the United States. New international student enrollment in the US and online outside the US fell by 43% in fall 2020. In addition to new enrollments, 90% of institutions reported international student deferrals to a future semester. These institutions reported that approximately 40,000 international students had chosen to defer enrollment to a future semester. So we anticipate that despite the decline, the US should remain and will likely remain the #1 destination globally to earn their degrees in fall 2020. Now I'm going to quickly move to US study abroad and US students studying abroad for academic credit. So again, I just want to clarify here that we're looking at US students studying abroad in the 2018-19 academic year. So this is even 1 year further back than the census. This year's analysis does not yet reflect the effect of COVID-19, but it will in the year to come. In 2018-19, we saw continued growth in the number of U.S. students who received academic credit for study abroad, bringing the total to over 347,000. Again, here we have 20 years of U.S. study abroad growth. We found that the number of students pursuing study abroad has steadily increased, and we see that the number of students studying abroad has more than doubled over the past 2 decades, going from around 130,000 to over 347,000. As we look at this growth, much of it has been driven by short-term study abroad, which are abroad experiences for a summer or 8 weeks or less. This is likely due to colleges and universities expanding opportunities to a more diverse group of students who may not have otherwise been able to pursue study abroad. When we look at the map of where students are studying abroad, we see that the UK, Italy, and Spain were the most popular destinations in 2018-19, which is reflective of the trend we have seen. These 3 leading destinations host nearly 1/3 of all US students studying abroad. But again, when we take a step back, we begin to see the full map of destinations. And we actually found that in 2018-19, institutions reported students studying in over 180 destinations. So last but not least, I want to take a moment to discuss global student mobility and the patterns and trends there through our Project Atlas work. According to the UNESCO Institute of Statistics, the total number of international students in 2018 reached 5.6 million, more than doubling over the last 20 years. As the number of students has increased, so has global competition for higher education talent. In 2000 and today, the number 1 host of international students remains the United States, hosting approximately 20% of all globally mobile students, nearly twice as many as the students as the next leading host country. And while Project Atlas showed that the UK has maintained its position as second since Project Atlas began collecting this data, you can also see other leading hosts within the top 10 and how they have changed positions over time, making evident their successful efforts to expand outreach and recruitment to international students. So before I conclude, I just want to share with everybody that this past spring, we launched a new Open Doors website, and it's opendoorsdata.org. And all of the data that I presented today is actually on our website. So we really welcome you to explore this data and reach out to us at opendoors@iie.org if you have any questions. And Anna, I'll be happy also to take any questions from you or the audience.
Hello, everyone. Hello again. Well, you know, I think my one question, which is, I know, going to be the most difficult question, but you've been doing this for so many years. And even though I know we're facing such kind of an unprecedented situation, you know, do you have any thoughts on the trends you might be seeing over the next year or two?
So I think we've been looking at this really holistically. So I didn't get a chance to share all the data today, but we not only asked about enrollment trends for fall 2020, but we also asked about outreach and recruitment for future years, for future students. And I think it's cautiously optimistic. I think what we found is that institutions in fall 2020 reported spending as much, if not more, on outreach and recruitment of international students. So the commitment to internationalization of campuses does remain and does continue to be there. We also found that institutions are pivoting the way that they do virtually now. A lot of that is happening through virtual events or virtual recruitment events, also working with networks like Education USA or working with their international partners. While I don't have a view or a crystal ball, as everybody would like to have, to see where this all goes, we certainly do see that institutions are intensively working on maintaining their international student population, at least through what we're seeing in their outreach and recruitment efforts.
Okay. And just one final quick question. Does IIE have any plans, or perhaps you already do, of measuring moving forward, measuring the collaborations virtually among universities, because, obviously your colleague Alan Goodman, talked about this pent-up demand, and that, when the pandemic ebbs and possibly different immigration policies with the new administration, you could see levels returning to normal or remaining steady. But you could certainly also see that, universities are going to take advantage of what they've learned through virtual learning. So, is that a new area that you will be gauging down the line?
So I think that that's a great question, and it's a great point. I think we have really been looking hard at kind of what have been some of the more historic definitions of international educational exchange, and whether those definitions may need to be reconsidered. Certainly, as you saw in the fall 2020 snapshot survey, we saw the need to also measure virtual enrollment and virtual exchange. And I think that may continue, at least for the foreseeable future, to be a consideration for us. I think while physical student and scholar mobility was what we usually used as the benchmark, I think we really do need to consider how the pandemic has brought to light the abilities and the possibilities of virtual enrollment, virtual exchange, and virtual partnerships. So we are definitely looking into how to better and more holistically measure this moving forward.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for these insights, and to our audience. The Institute of International Education has a ton of, as I said, helpful figures and information. IIE.org, correct? Is that the web?
Yes, IIE.org. And if you want to check out the Open Doors data, it's opendoorsdata.org, and I can just put it into the chat.
Okay, perfect. So thank you again for those insights. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to follow up. So thank you, as always. Hopefully next year we can see each other in person.
Hopefully. Thank you all so much. And please feel free to reach out.